All right. Welcome, everybody, into another edition of Warm Weather Fans. I am your host, Brian Stone, joined as always by Zeke Palermo. And today we have Jack Fitzpatrick from JMU Sports News here to talk about James Madison's huge win over Old Dominion on Saturday. Jack, thanks so much for joining us. How's it going, man?
Appreciate you guys having me. I'm feeling real good after that dominant win yesterday. A game that I've described to my friends as the perfect football game because in the first half, it was back and forth. It was edge of your seat. It was electric. And in the second half, your favorite team pulled away and just kind of flexed their muscle on the opponent. So I'm feeling great.
Zeke, how's it going for you, man?
We'll get to it later, but I did not have the same experience watching my team over the weekend. So, I'm just glad it's at the end of the slate. So we have, another half hour before we get to it.
and Jack, on the JMU side of things, I actually do have two questions for you that don't necessarily relate to this game, but just kind of overall thoughts that we've had of the season as a whole. Because full transparency, I live in Louisville, so I went to the Louisville JMU game, and that kind of relates to a lot of my questions. Is some of the decision making coach wise is sort of baffling to me. It's obviously worked kind of in spite of some of those questionable decisions because the roster is just so strong and like the coaching is good, but there are just things that happen that I'm just kind of scratching my head going, this team would be bulletproof if they just kind of made some heads or tails of some of these things. But yeah.
It's that Louisville game. What a time for you to kind of get. Just watching that game, it left all JMU fans, I think, scratching their heads, going like, "What is this? Is this what the rest of the season's going to be? This 50-50 snap share between a pure throwing quarterback in Barnett and Sluka, this rushing quarterback." And it became so apparent, and then even more so in the following weeks, where Matthew Sluka came in as a garbage time quarterback this last Saturday against ODU. And it was the first time since the Louisville game that he threw a pass. Like he has played in, I think, 3 other games, and it's just been clear 4th and short, 3rd and short situations. They're lining up to run QB power. The opponent would stack the box, and you're just like, you have to have a tendency breaker at some point. And I don't think they really gave a tendency breaker in this ODU game. I think it was just garbage time, and they just started calling plays. So very head-scratching quarterback decisions that we've seen from it. But we've seen them wean off more and more Sluka packages as the weeks have gone on. And I think it's partly because Alonza is starting to find that rhythm over the last couple of weeks. And I think it's also partly because the success rate on Sluka packages are next to 0.
Sure.
Yeah.
Something that you mentioned about Barnett, or something that we talked about in the preseason, was especially as we saw these Sluka packages so much early, was a concern of like, well, did they rush Barnett back too quick? Was this something where they just really like Matthew Sluka? I know there's a history, quarterback history there, but like, what was the situation? Was it really a competition? Were they trying to make it just package based?
So from the outside looking in, what it kind of seemed like, because the coaching staff, they're very tight-lipped on everything. They won't give you any more information that they're required to. So something that kind of we all were speculating was, Alonza tore his ACL, according to reports, on November 30th, the regular season finale against Marshall. Final play of the game. So literally the last opportunity for him to tear his ACL in the regular season, he does it. And typically an ACL repair takes 9 to 12 months. And the season opener was 9 months to the day after he tore it. He was cleared for contact about a week and a half before the season opener. And so he then started taking first team reps more and more. But with quarterbacks, you're already non-contact. So he was taking a lot of reps, maybe, the full like 11 on 11 types of reps where there might be guys falling at your feet. He wasn't necessarily taking, but everything else he was still involved with. And so when he was cleared for contact, it was kind of like 100% go. And based off the recruitment of Matthew Sluka and the recruitment of Camden Coleman, a Richmond transfer quarterback from the FCS level up, I don't think the coaching staff was expecting him to be ready. Like, Camden Coleman is a good quarterback. He is a starting level quarterback in the Sun Belt. I was saying the whole offseason, I think Camden's going to be the starter, be the QB1, in part because I didn't think Alonza Barnett would be ready. I thought they would kind of take it slow in his rehab, let him use a medical red shirt because he still has one of those to use this year, and then he'd come back next year and still have 2 years of eligibility. However, he kind of powered through the rehab and forced the coaching staff's hand, it kind of seemed like, where they sat back and they said, oh crap, this guy's ready to go. Like, we weren't expecting this. Now we have 2 capable QBs. Camden Coleman, it seems they're giving him his red shirt, so he'll sit out this year. But with Sluka, they're like, we have to figure out a way to make this work. And they tried to against Louisville. They've tried a couple of other times. It just hasn't. And I think we're going to see it kind of slip away and him become your traditional QB2.
Well, okay, so that's actually a good opportunity for us to kind of break into this Old Dominion win and kind of break that down more. I don't know, Jack, if you agree here, but I thought this was the healthiest that I thought Alonza has looked all season. Like, running the ball specifically, like that aspect had kind of been not missing from his game, but had not been as sharp as it was.
Yeah.
It seemed like in last year, and obviously the ACL, huge factor. But he runs for 153 yards in this game. I mean, he was doing it all. Like a couple weeks ago, we had kind of said, the Georgia State win was just putting them on notice
Felt
and
like a
saying,
loss.
hey, yeah, like it was the closest thing to a loss that a win could feel like, but it put them on notice in a game that they still could win because they frankly, the talent gap between them and Georgia State is just massive, and Zeke knows that firsthand. But yeah, this felt like the first time this season to me that I was like, Alonzo's all the way back. It feels like he has no sort of limitations on his game anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it did feel that way 100% because this season he's been a solid downhill runner, but whenever he's been asked to scramble specifically, he just he didn't have the lateral quickness that was necessary. Then it was kind of fitting. I think it was the opening touchdown, like a 70 some odd yard run, and it was essentially a downhill run and he was getting going, but that kind of got the wheels in motion. And there was another, I think it was a touchdown run. Yeah, it was his touchdown run, maybe his third of the day. He spins out of a would-be sack. A free rusher comes off of his blind side. I don't know how he feels it. He spins out of the sack. He finds the corner of the end zone and scores the touchdown. That's the most athletic I have seen Alonza Barnett since last season. And even at times last season, he lacked kind of that mobility because he was dealing with ankle injuries throughout really from ULM on, he was kind of dealing with some ankle stuff. So he looked like he did UNC Ball State a season ago. And I think that is because for a couple of reasons. I think he's now further and further away from a torn ACL, which he came back from in 9 months. He's not wearing a leg brace, nothing like that. So he's been full to go, but that just takes a mental, even if your body's ready, your mental's not necessarily 100% ready. I think he's now gotten far enough away where his mental's a little bit better when it comes to the ACL. And then he's gotten reps, like something that he needs. And something I think we all forget, even myself, when I'm complaining about Alonza Barnett, he's a redshirt junior. Like, yeah, he's been around a little bit, but last year was his first full-time season as a starter. Like, he is still kind of young. He's still needing some reps to understand what defenses are giving him and how to kind of figure that out. His decision-making, his processing, all of those words, all of the buzzwords you use when talking about QBs. He needed the reps to develop that. He's gotten the reps now. And I think he's gotten healthier. Like you said, it was on display with his lateral quickness. And it was by far his best game. Arguably, and some fans might say the UNC game. I think that was the best Alonza Barnett game we have ever seen.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I mean, some of the stats that, advanced analytic, grading stuff from PFF, like even bears that out. I mean, he had the 24th highest passing grade in the country on Saturday. He was the third best rushing grade of anybody who took more than 5 rushes in the Sun Belt. He was the third best. Yeah, I mean, so take us through like the first half, because obviously that was the more competitive half of the two. What was sort of going through your head as, both teams are kind of trading possessions, just kind of marching up and down the field? Were you like, oh man, this is one of those like last team to have the ball wins type games?
I mean, I was settling in and I was like, this is about to be a fun football game. Like I'm the weird JMU fan, and this might get JMU fans mad at me. I kind of like ODU. I've worked with ODU. I do play-by-play. I've done a lot of work with their men's basketball team, with their field hockey, soccers, all of that stuff. So I have a soft spot in my heart for ODU. They're a fun time down there. So, watching the game, I was like, if JMU wins this game, this is the best possible outcome. We get an instant classic. We get ODU showing like they belong in the upper tier of the Sun Belt. This is awesome. I can't wait as long as JMU wins this game. But as it stands now, they're trading scores. There's nothing wrong with this right now. And so that was my thinking through it. Like, it was just kind of sitting back, and I was just like, this is a fun football. Like, just so weird. The fumbled kickoff, touchdown. The Alonza scamper for 70 plus yards, touchdown. The 98-yard reception for a touchdown. The Nick DeGennaro slant for like another 70-yard touchdown. And you're just like, what in the world am I watching? This is the craziest start to a football game I've ever witnessed. And that I was just like, if this keeps up, this is going to be an all-time great game.
Yeah.
I want to ask your opinion on Colton Joseph and really what James Madison did that was effective to stop him, because we've now seen 2 weeks in a row, last week against Marshall, and then this past week, or I guess 2 weeks ago against Marshall, and then this past week against James Madison. Colton Joseph still very good through the air, but for the first time this year, really poor on the ground, only 4 rushing yards. That's his fewest by 45 rushing yards this season. So, like, what was James Madison doing that enabled them to kind of stop that? Because it's very obvious to a lot of people that this offense revolves around, except maybe Old Dominion fans, as we've heard a lot of, that this offense revolves around the success of Colton Joseph.
I mean, JMU's defensive line, like it has been since it jumped up to the FBS. It was with Bryant Haynes, the defensive coordinator, Kurt Signetti. It was with Lyle Hemphill last year, the defensive coordinator. It is this year under Colin Hitchler, the defensive coordinator. They stop the run. Like, you can typically pass pretty effectively against them, because sometimes, although this year that's kind of not the case, because Colin Hitchler is, I think, the best defensive coordinator at the group of 5 level, and will likely be in discussions for head coaching jobs this offseason at whatever G5s open up when we have the craziest coaching carousel known to man that's about to hit. But typically they say, you aren't going to beat us on the ground. You're going to have to throw against us. And that was the case against ODU. And they said, Colton Joseph, we are going to put a spy on you. We aren't going to overrush our pass lanes. We're going to keep you kind of bottled up in the pocket. We're going to have, not to pull out like every coaching cliche there is, but like, we're going to stay home. We're going to have that type of just discipline where they have that weird, like, long extended read option play where sometimes he holds it and then goes to the blind side. I mean, they really just locked him in where he didn't have those opportunities. And I think from there, it resulted in him. I mean, it's a bummer because I love Colton Joseph. I think he's an elite quarterback. I think he's going to be, I mean, the jump in talent we saw from last year to this year, I think we're going to see that again from this year to next year if he stays with Old Dominion. But man, the turnovers popped up again for him, and that's been his Achilles heel. He has a little bit of a fumble issue, but in this game he had the interception issue, and that's just tough, and that's going to unravel all ODU plans.
I was actually going to ask you about that, because I think when they did the final total, I saw you guys post it on your Twitter account, but the second half yardage total for Old Dominion was like 10 yards or something after halftime, which is nuts to hold a team like
275 in the first half, 10 in the second half.
Yeah, and that's crazy to me. And they put up a stat on the broadcast. I think there was 12 minutes to go in the game. Colton Joseph, through the third quarter and the first 3 minutes of the fourth quarter, was 0 of 4 for 0 yards passing and 2 picks. And I was just like, I think not only you guys not only have the scheme to be able to do that, but you have the personnel as well. And I think that's what the difference is between JMU. A lot of other teams is a lot of other teams have the idea correct. And we saw it with Marshall. You know, 1 week they're holding Old Dominion to 10 points through almost 4 full quarters. And then this past week they're in a shootout with Texas State, who roughly with Brad Jackson has kind of the same quarterback. So I'm just kind of like, what was different from the first half to the second half, and what did they do differently to kind of hem him in, I guess, to make him kind of one-dimensional passer?
Yeah, I think we all know that ODU's got one of the more unique offenses in the Sun Belt, and I think that uniqueness just kind of offers up opportunities for them to have early success. And then Hitchler's and we've seen it now, JMU has not allowed a touchdown, has not allowed a score in the second half for the past 3 games. So over the last 3 second halves, 0 points have been scored against him. Hitchler is an elite level adjuster, especially going into the second half. And that was the case in this one. But if you kind of take a step back with it as well, one of the touchdowns there in the first half, it's the special teams touchdown to open things up. So that kind of throws off your numbers a little bit. But I mean, at the end of the day, they did have 275 first half yards, which is nothing to sneeze at. And I think it just boils down to they hit a couple big plays. Trey Brown, their star wide receiver, I mean, he was a star in this game for sure. He showed out in the first half. I think he got, I don't want to say lucky, but a couple busted coverages that he was able to take advantage of. And that's what good teams do. They take advantage of the opportunities, and they just didn't have any opportunities in the second half because that defense is just elite at having adjustments and going into second halves of games.
I'm personally like, Zeke knows this. I'm personally like a big like roster fit building type guy where it's like, I think you need to have guys slated into certain types of roles. Like,
yeah,
you don't necessarily need to have like a big X receiver that like goes out there and gets 15 targets a game, but you need to have somebody with kind of that profile. And to me, the reason I always favored JMU over Old Dominion in this game is Old Dominion kind of profiles as a team that has a bunch of deep threats and guys that can win like down the field, but they don't have. I always compare Corey Rucker for Arkansas State to this because he profiles as that big X receiver. I need a guy that is going to go out and get me 9 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown. Like, I need a guy on 3rd and 7 that I know we're going to. And that's the thing with Old Dominion is it feels like it's a collaborative kind of group effort, but it doesn't feel like we have an alpha guy that can go out and get us a big first down in a spot. It feels like, all right, well, we need to break a couple coverages here and there and get loose and try to get something down the field, because if we don't, we've seen what happens with Old Dominion when they don't get those breaks against like Marshall, Indiana, who now we know is Indiana's amazing, but Indiana earlier in the year did kind of the same thing where it's like, you might get 1 or 2 guys loose, but if you don't have that guy that can win, it makes it really, really hard to do that consistently. And that, I just don't feel like Old Dominion from a roster construction offensive perspective has that guy. So I think that kind of puts a ceiling on what is a good offense, but just what they're able to kind of do on a down-to-down basis.
I think it's so Colton Joseph reliant, where that fits really well into what Joseph does when he's on and when that offense is firing on all cylinders, where you can go, all right, we're going to go deep threat. If that's not there, Colton, you're going to get the first down for us. And they can rely on that. And then when it's not cooking, when it's not working the way it's supposed to, it looks like someone kind of threw some sand in the cogs and it got real nasty real quick.
To use, an NFL analogy from you guys' neck of the woods, it kind of reminds me of the Commanders a little bit, where it's like,
man, they just getting blown out right now as we speak. Holy hell.
Well, it just reminds me of like, all right, well, when Terry McLaurin's winning down the field, everything looks like gravy. And Jaden Daniels kind of profiles a little bit the same as Colton Joseph with his legs and stuff. But when it's like, I don't know, man, Terry's not here and, the rushing lanes aren't available, then it's like, uh-oh, what are we doing now? Oh, no. So that's just kind of the vibe that Old Dominion always gave us. And Zeke talked about this in the preseason, and I agree, and we got crapped on by Old Dominion fans, but we're like, this offense is too heliocentric around the quarterback to where it's like every other piece feels ancillary to where if the whole offense is working, then great. But if not, it's like, who else is going to step up in a big spot? And we've now seen kind of 2 weeks in a row. It's like, if Colton Joseph isn't dead on and like ready to gun and do this, it just doesn't feel like it runs effectively. So I don't know. This is kind of the Ricky Rahne experience for them.
Man, the Happy Gilmore meme where it's like, you're smart, I'm dumb, you were right, I was wrong. Every year they suck me in, and every year I'm like, Sunbelt East, dark horse contenders, guys. Ricky Rahne, he has this horrible record in one-score games. Eventually, they're going to turn that around, and they're going to be good in one-score games. And every year they start hot, and I'm like, I'm starting to kind of clap my hands. I'm starting to do my victory lap. I'm stretching for it. I'm getting ready for it. And then they fall on their face, and it's like, I was wrong. You were right. And it's rinse and repeat and it feels like this for this year. They've got a lot to work on.
Yeah. I mean, we fell for this 2 weeks ago Old Dominion just kept winning games, and we're like, all right, guys, eventually we're going to give you your flowers. Eventually we're going to give you your flowers. What we were waiting on was really Old Dominion to step on the neck of another team. And when we saw them do that to Coastal, beat them 47-7, we were like, all right, fine. It's still Coastal, but you did what we've been asking, is actually like really beat down on a team. And I know I was like, all right, you guys were right. I was wrong. There's more to this offense than Colton Joseph. And then this offense has put up 2 back-to-back. I mean, it's still like 3 touchdown games, but relative stinkers compared to what we've been told to expect out of Old Dominion. And so, it's just really frustrating because we were sucked into that as well as people that were really, really down on this offense early in the year. As we look back at it, maybe this was our own fault. An FCS win, a Virginia Tech win, a Liberty win, and a Coastal Carolina win really kind of change how we perceive this team.
I know I'm the JMU rep here, but I'm going to defend ODU a little bit because I'm going to throw out the Marshall game entirely because I think every team gets kind of a mulligan. And when you have 2 muffed punts, a pick six, Marshall had 24 points off of turnovers. Like, that stinks. And like, that's not going to happen again. Now, this JMU game, there are real issues here. For the Marshall game, I'm just like, that's weird. That's never going to happen again. I'm going to throw that game out. So I'll defend him a little bit. But, I mean, now you look at the upcoming schedule for ODU. App is App. They're a nuisance. Like, they might be good. They might be bad. I don't know. ULM is ULM. Troy, Southern, Georgia State. You've got 3 winnable games in there down the stretch. 2 winnable games down. Like, for sure, chalk it up as wins. And, you better hope you pull out those 2, for sure wins because you're still 2 games away from bowl eligibility.
Well, and the other thing we talked about too is, I mean, this game was basically the season in a nutshell for Old Dominion especially for Old Dominion, because now you have 2 conference losses. You need JMU to lose 3 in order to propel you into the conference title game. And you can't have another hiccup, like you said, against Marshall. And it's like, I said this to Zeke last week. I was like, I think after they lose to JMU, they could lose like 1 or 2 more in the back stretch and kind of just be sitting at like 7-5, 8-4 when it's all said and done. And I'm like, when you look at how they started and you look at that as a potential possibility, you're like, whoa, that is a huge backslide. Because like Troy has come to life. Like we don't know what they're gonna do against Troy.
It's at Southern. Weird things happen in Statesboro. Like, that's tough. Really, the only game that I'm comfortable in saying is a win is home against Georgia State to finish out the season. Like, that's the only one where I'm like, for sure, dub. Because going to Monroe is difficult because there's nothing in Monroe. Like, that's just a horrible place to play. And you've got to go there. I would hope you beat App. You're a 14-point favorite this weekend. Like, hope you do that. Hope you bounce back. And if you bounce back, I'm fully back in on the bandwagon. But if you look shaky doing it, I'm going to be like, oh, no. Oh, I'm going to be looking for the first exit off.
Something else I wanted to ask about Old Dominion real quick, as someone who's much closer to that pulse than we are. What's the patience with Ricky Rahne? Because we're in year 6, and his ceiling has been a 6-7 season. That's the best he's accomplished with this team. Like, when does the buck stop? When do we realize that this isn't it?
I think this offseason, fans were gathering the kindling. The fans were walking around Norfolk, Virginia. They were finding any little twig and they were getting ready. Maybe they were setting up his seat. They weren't lighting it yet, but it was set up underneath for a quick start. Then he has the awesome beginning of this year. They take down Virginia Tech. I think fans forgot that they had to keep gathering the kindling. And I think these last 2 weeks have made the fans realize, guys, I think we need to find matches now. Like, I think we need to put a little oomph behind it. I don't think, barring an catastrophic meltdown this season, I don't think he's fired this year. But I think things might get I think his seat might get a little warm if, they don't have a good season next year. Like, I think the seat is starting to warm up. But I will say, I think ODU will right the ship here and will finish out in a strong way and make it to a bowl game and make it to a pretty solid bowl game. I don't think they're going to limp their way in by going with 2 wins down the stretch here. I think they're a good football team, and I think Ricky Rahne will solidify his spot. But if they do limp down the finish line here, I'd expect his seat to get pretty warm pretty quick.
Well, the other thing too, and I know Old Dominion fans don't want to hear this, is a possibility is some team with NIL funds shows up at Colton Joseph's door and goes, "Hey man, you've been really good for what has been kind of a shaky, iffy roster the last 2 years. Imagine you come play at Inter Power 5 school here. We'll figure it out around you. We're not going to make it so that you have to be Superman every single game and lead us in passing and rushing." So then you're kind of back at square one a little bit, because it was like they finally, I'm just saying this is a hypothetical, but it's like if you finally identified a quarterback with Joseph and then you have to start over again. And it's like, I know people are high on that backup Hinnkel who played a little bit in this game, but I think Colton Joseph is a much more polished passer. Hinnkel may be a better pure runner, but we've seen now, like, if there are multiple teams that have good running quarterbacks that are kind of throwing the ball, Louisiana being a prime example with Lunch Winfield. It's like,
Lunch.
I don't know, man. If Joseph departs this offseason, like it could be really bad next year. Like we truly don't know what we might get out of Ricky Rahne in 26.
Yeah, and I think ODU fans like Hinnkel because it reminds them of Heineke, like the greatest ODU quarterback in the like. I think they just forget that he's a different person. But I thought they were going to lose Colton this offseason. Like, I thought he showed the flashes last year. ODU has sneaky NIL funds. I'll say that. Like, ODU's got a pretty solid. I know none of the numbers are public, but if they were to become public, I'd expect ODU to be like in the top 5 of the Sun Belt in terms of NIL funds that they have available. Now, where does that stack up in the group of 5? I'm not sure. Where does that stack up in the Power 4? Nowhere near them. So, yeah, a team could come in, but I think Colton Joseph, if he didn't leave this offseason, then I think he may stick around for another year, because I think he's only a redshirt sophomore. So if I'm not mistaken, so he's still got 3 years of eligibility. He's still got his junior and senior year after this.
Yeah.
Which might make him actually, now that I say that, might actually make him a more desirable target for a Power 4. Maybe a Vandy to come get him and replace Diego Pavia.
Right. All right. So
that's assuming he doesn't come back for a 9th year.
Oh yeah, I forgot his pending litigation right now that he's trying to sue for permanent residency at Vanderbilt.
It's crazy. All right, so I had 2 JMU centric questions that don't necessarily relate to this game, but more just kind of the way that the team is run as a whole. We saw a couple weeks ago with the Georgia State game, Barnett just frankly didn't play very well. He didn't hit like 75 yards passing in that game. There have been games like that in the past. Why do you think he has those games that are seemingly dropped in? He shows up in big spots like he did last Saturday or yesterday against Old Dominion, but then he has these games where it just seems like it's a big shrug, and it's like I can't really explain it.
Is it the chicken or is it the egg? Is it the quarterback or is it the offensive coordinator? Is it the play calling or like, I think that's what it boils down to. And Alonza Barnett is the most volatile quarterback I have ever seen in my entire life. And I mean that now that they just did what they did to ODU. I mean that in a nice way. If they had lost this ODU game for the opposite way, it would have come out as a derogatory thing. But if he hits his first couple of passes, if he hits a big play early on, oh boy, watch out. This man's about to have the game of his career. If he misses a swing pass, if there's a couple negative plays on that opening drive and they might have to go 3 and out and a punt, oh boy, you're in for a Georgia State type of game. Like, that's just kind of the way he has played. He's very emotional. He's a very emotional quarterback. So the big plays are awesome. The bad plays are terrible. And you see it kind of snowball from there. And then add into the fact that the offensive coordinator this season, Alonza Barnett's one of the best deep ball throwers in all of the Sun Belt. They were they would throw deep at one of the least highest clips in the Sun Belt going into that ODU game. They just did not open it up a ton. I mean, really going back pre-second half of Louisiana, he had attempted only a handful of balls that traveled more than 20 air yards. And that was where his bread was buttered last year. I mean, that is where he made a name for himself. The UNC game were deep balls. Ball State was deep balls. That's what he's very good at. And he's not the best intermediate thrower. And they were asking him to do a lot of intermediate passes, timing plays, quick decision-making. And that wasn't really fully his wheelhouse. And then you add in the fact that he didn't have any reps this offseason, really like true reps. You add in the fact that he's still coming back from an ACL. There was just so much to it that I think made it for a frustrating experience to begin the year that was culminated in the worst football game I have ever watched in Georgia State.
All right. So my last question here, and you made, kind of reference to this early when we started talking. Why do you think they're so hesitant to kind of open up some plays for Sluka? I know that it's become, very much like Alonza's the 1, Sluka's the 2. But even still, you mentioned it, and I mentioned it like last week on our show. It's become very apparent that it's when Sluka's in the game, we're going to run left, right, center. And like, that's the playbook. Like, we're not doing anything outside of this. Why do you think that they're so reticent to kind of open it up and let him at least throw the ball just as something to put on tape,
I struggle with that too, because wouldn't you want a tendency breaker? Like, that's the biggest thing. We even saw in the Boca Raton Bowl last year when J.C. Evans, the true freshman, comes in to split snaps with Billy Atkins. It's J.C. run right, J.C. run left, J.C. run straight. And J.C. Evans had one pass in that game. It was a jump pass at the 1-yard line for a touchdown. And that wasn't even called, according to the rumors and reports. He audibled, the true freshman audibled to that play at the line in the bowl game. And so the offensive coordinator didn't even want to throw it with him. And it's the same thing now with Sluka. Genuinely, I wish I had an answer for that, but I do not know. I don't know if it's that they lack trust in Sluka for him to make those throws. I don't know if he doesn't have the arm talent. Like, I don't know what it is, but it's quite frustrating when you see him come in and you're like, all right, I know what's going to happen. Not going to be a pass, I can tell you that much. And the defense knows it. When he comes in, all 11 defenders are within 5 yards of the box, and he gets stuffed now every single time he runs it.
And then, like I said, I went to the Louisville game, and it felt like the only time they gave him the opportunity to throw is when they ran that weird double pass with him and Barnett on the field at the same time, where Sluka snaps it and throws it to Barnett, and then Barnett needs to throw it now. And it's like, do you guys not trust him to throw it vertically, like, at all? Like, I can't make heads or tails of it.
It's so funny because in the Weber State game against an FCS opponent, he threw 2 deep balls. One was a touchdown, one was an interception. Then against Louisville, he had another interception. It was a deep ball pass. And then they were like, all right, maybe we stop throwing it because now he has 4 pass attempts. One's a touchdown, 2 are picks, or it was some like crazy stat. So they took it away. My thinking is that he's just a point and shoot quarterback. Because against ODU, he had that garbage time touchdown to smoke Zeron Collins in the corner of the end zone. If you watch that replay, Sluka has no business throwing it. Like,
no,
just the ODU defender draped all over Collins. He throws a bullet to the back of the ODU DB's head, and Collins somehow manages to catch it. And it was just clearly like, that is who you're throwing to. You throw it no matter what. And he was like, all right, coach, got it. And then just zings it over to him. And it's just like, I don't know. I don't think you should have thrown that pass. It was it ended up on SportsCenter top 10. That's awesome. So I think there's some lack of trust and I don't want to say lack of ability, because I think he is a very good quarterback. He was one of the best quarterbacks in all of FCS football 2-3 seasons ago. But I think there's just some sort of weird vibes going around it.
Yeah, we're kind of dealing with something similar in Statesboro, where we've got this like young, exciting quarterback who like runs, and then they like refuse to let it. He threw one deep ball similar to Sluka in a game, and
Yeah.
opposite of Sluka, it actually hit the receiver in the face mask and bounced off. And then they were like, "We're never throwing the ball with you again."
We're done.
And I was,
it's
yeah,
JC
and I was like,
JC French, baby.
yeah, right. Zeke, do you have any last kind of questions or anything for Jack before we let him go here?
Not in particular. We just really appreciate you coming on, man. It was it's always good to talk with someone who's got eyes on teams outside of Georgia. So it's good to have another perspective. And you answered a lot of our questions, especially as it relates to how do you swallow Alonza Barnett being like two-face every week, and what was going on in those early seasons. So we really appreciate you coming on, man.
Hey, thank you guys for having me. It was a blast. Yeah, and hopefully this is the sign of things to come, and we no longer get two-face anymore. We get a consistent quarterback, something JMU hasn't had all season.
All right, Jack, thank you so much for joining us, man. Really appreciate it. All right, so thanks to Jack for joining us from JMU Sports News. Let's go ahead and get to the other games that we had around the conference. So last Tuesday, Arkansas State beat South Alabama 15-14. This was an ugly one. In the words of famous wrestling announcer Jim Ross, this was bowling shoe ugly, I would say. So it basically comes down to, for me, the end of the game, South Alabama lines up for a field goal with 6 minutes to go. That would have put them up. I think it was 18-14 would have been the, or I guess, yeah, or something like that along those lines. And they miss a 29-yarder with 6 minutes to go. And then Arkansas State walks back down the field, kicks a field goal, and then Butch Jones is out of there with a win. This just continues the issues that South Alabama can't win for trying. I mean, it's really bad in Mobile.
Yeah, I read a stat from I think it was from Craig Stevenson, who covers Troy and South Alabama, and it was, I don't have the exact numbers right, but this is the third or fourth straight game where South Alabama has allowed a score, a lead-changing score in the final 3 or 4 minutes of the game. And this exacerbates the problems that we've had with South Al all year, in that, frankly, it's just not a great football team. The quarterback play is incredibly shoddy. Kentrell Bullock has been good, but not great. I expected a lot more of him in the departure of Fluff Bothwell. Devin Voisin has not been the reception magnet that we anticipated. And then outside of Blaine Myrick, I don't really know a ton of difference makers on the defense. And so this is just what I'm really surprised out of this game is less so the South Alabama angle, but rather the Arkansas State angle. And remember, I'm not surprised, because I've been on the anti-Butch Jones, anti-Arkansas State wave as long as we've had this show. But this is the problem. What happens when Jalen Rayner can't do it? What happens when he can't put on the cape? This is what happens. You get the same performance that JMU had against Georgia State, where if you play any other team in the conference, you don't get out of this game with a win. And so this win, this allows Arkansas State to move forward and shoot, they're probably going to end up bowl eligible after this. If you look at the rest of their schedule, where you have App and Louisiana and Georgia Southern, those are winnable games for an Arkansas State team. App kind of being the only one in the air for me still. And it's just what are we doing? When does this become unacceptable? Because you did this congratulations. You beat Texas State last week, 31-30, but 2 weeks ago you put up, or I guess it was 3 weeks ago now, you only put up 16 against ULM or 21 against Kennesaw State. So it's which Arkansas State team is real? It's so clearly this version of the team.
I mean, it's good that they were able to pull out the win ultimately. Obviously, you talked about what happens with Rayner when he can't put on the cape. He kind of did though in this game a little bit. Like he's the leading passer, he's the leading rusher. I mean, he had 209 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He ran for 76 yards, but Zeke, to play your favorite game, he had a 42-yard run on that play. I think we kind of know what Arkansas State is. Like, again, they have a limited ceiling. This was a Tuesday night game, which, even with bye weeks, it doesn't seem like teams are prepared to play on Tuesday night. It just seems like, I don't know if the body chemistry or whatever is off or like what the problem is. They just don't ever seem fully prepared and like ready to roll. I think my big question for you is, and I know you said this about that Arkansas State was kind of the big takeaway.
Mm-hmm.
When does South Alabama make a move off of Davenport? When do we see another quarterback take like a full complement of snaps in a game? Because we had talked about Zach Pyron in the preseason. There was that other quarterback whose name escapes me that took some snaps when Davenport got benched earlier, who wasn't Zach Pyron, but frankly didn't make a huge impression. When do we just see another warm body take snaps for the Jaguars? Because it's not working.
I really don't know. I think I'm curious what's going on with Zach Pyron, because I've got a friend, and I talked about this in the South Alabama preview episode, I think, a friend that covers Georgia Tech for On 3. And he told me that even before last season, I guess it was kind of Haynes King's breakout season at Georgia Tech. He told me that going into the season and even kind of throughout, he felt that Zach Pyron was maybe the better choice for Georgia Tech. Obviously, we now know that's not true, and perhaps discredits a little bit the argument. But it's this idea that look at what Haynes King is doing at Georgia Tech. This is a guy, Zach Pyron, that I trust my friend here, Alex. I trust him in that Zach Pyron's a good quarterback. He didn't. This isn't he got beat out by a really good guy in Haynes King.
Yeah.
I don't understand. This is the same thing that we saw with, or to some degree, that we finally only saw change at Georgia State. We saw this. We're seeing this at Georgia Southern. We didn't really. We now know after talking with Jack, but it wasn't really the case. But it was a little bit the case at James Madison. It's like, what are you waiting for to make this change? What have you not seen that you are? What is it? Tell me, define it for me. That's going to make you say Bishop Davenport isn't the guy. Is it that you're just trying to preserve red shirts for your young guys? Jared Hollins came in. He's a freshman and threw like 2 passes in this game. Is it because you're trying to preserve the red shirts? Is it because Zach Pyron just simply isn't him? Like, what is it? Because we've learned that Bishop Davenport can't do it. And he has some really good receivers around him, but they're not getting the opportunity to, again, this is not a bowl eligible type South Al team, but you're putting a real hard ceiling by sticking with the same guy.
Yeah. All right. So let's move off of this game. I think we've pretty much done it justice. It was not a good game one way or the other. Not a great win, but a win's a win, I suppose. Let's move on to the Saturday slate. So Troy defeats UL Monroe 37-14. I'm going to ask you a similar question about ULM that I just asked. When is the Aiden Armenta experiment over? Like, when does Bryant Vincent look at himself and go, listen, we can't just have a guy that puts a giant, cement cap on this team where if we get down, they were down 10-0 in the first quarter. By ULM standards, that means the game's over. Sometimes they're lucky. Last week against Coastal, they scored 8 points. They scored 14 in this one. A lot of times they're lucky to score 2 touchdowns. So I don't know if there needs to be like a total scheme change, because what he did at UAB is not replicable here. But I mean, Hunter Herring played better in spurts than what we saw from Armenta. I don't know if he's a better fit for what they want to do, but Armenta doesn't seem to be a great fit, even in a run-heavy offense.
The difference here is that we've seen the other guys. We've seen Landon Graves and we've seen Hunter Herring. I don't think we've seen Bryson Kimbrough or Mason McHugh, two guys I frankly don't know a lick about. But we've seen Graves and we've seen Herring. And so this is a little different to me in that we have seen these guys play snaps before. And we understand that, frankly, the ceiling doesn't rise with them. This team was hit really, really hard by the loss of Ahmad Hardy. And you don't want to discredit kind of the impact of losing a runner of his nature. But like Braylon McReynolds has been good this year. You know, it's not like this has been a completely desolate running game where, like, again, to use another Georgia State comparison, just because they're, you know, the team I'm closest to, it's like whoever plays quarterback for Georgia State has a finite cap because of that team's inability to run. With Braylon McReynolds in this offensive line, yeah, it's not Ahmad Hardy, but that's a good run game. That's one of the better run games in the conference this year, a conference that is pretty scarce for good running backs right now. So I think this is a different situation. I don't think it's better, but it's different in that we've seen the guys and there's clearly a cap for everyone on this roster that they've already seen.
Yeah, I think what surprised me coming into this season was that we didn't really see a lot of different names, you know, in the quarterback room. Because for me, from what I saw Arminta last year, and I'm not even the head coach, like I'm just a guy that watches them on TV. I don't see this team winning maybe more than 6 games max with Arminta at quarterback. Because again, the second you get down 2 scores, all that, unlike a lot of other teams, you know, you can watch even the most kind of, I guess, bumbling teams like on Saturday. You can watch them and go, okay, when they go down 2 scores, they don't fly into a panic. ULM feels like they fly into a panic the second they get down like 10 points, 14 points. Like the game is essentially over, because what you can't do a lot of times is just run the ball and be like, it'll all work itself out. Like we're just going to keep running and it doesn't matter what the scoreboard says or anything like that. They truly, like, they don't have pass catching weapons. They don't have a good quarterback. I mean, let's just be real. Like I said last week, Arminta has been the easiest guy to pin down for any quarterback in the Sun Belt, because you know exactly what you're getting every single week. He will not throw for more than 171 yards or whatever at max. And so you're going to be barely scratching a bowl game. I don't know whether that's a fundamental change that Brian Vincent needs to make, or it's a personnel thing where it's like, we need to hit the portal harder. We need to recruit quarterback better and tell somebody like, hey, we're not just going to have you run bootleg play action and that just be basically the extent of the playbook for you. Like it needs to open up and they need another guy that can do it.
Something that I was initially willing earlier in the year to give ULM kind of the benefit of the doubt is because we saw the other team in this game, Troy, with Tucker Kilcrease, plays to a similar tune in that they really don't ask a ton out of their quarterback. And the difference is, well, there are 2 differences, right? One, general team composition. This is a much better Troy team than ULM. This is kind of what I anticipated Troy being last season. After the Summerall departure, I expected a lot of the remnants to, you know, hold that team up. That ended up not being the case, but here we are now with Gerard Parker. But we're also seeing Tucker Kilcrease in recent weeks. He's in the early parts of the season looked to be Aiden Armenta-esque, good enough to win you games, good enough to, you know, with a 170-yard ceiling, still do the job of a quarterback and take that responsibility and do with it a good job. But now we've seen in this game, for example, on 13 for 21, Kilcrease 200 yards. Last week, I think it was over 400 for the first time in his career, a career high by a large margin. That
to me is the key differentiator. I don't know if you played 12 quarters that Aiden Armenta would hit 400 yards. if you gave him 3 full games and pinned them, like just played 12 quarters straight, I don't know that he would break 300 yards the way that I don't know whether that is like I said, I don't know whether that is a schematic by design or whether he just has serious limitations. But that's the difference for me is Kilcrease has a ceiling that we've seen now that like, hey, he can elevate when he needs to. He may need to play like a bad defense, like a Texas State or whatever in order to make it happen. Arminta, you could put against Georgia State. I don't know that he's cracking 200 yards passing. And he doesn't bring a lot with his legs. Kilcrease kind of does. So it's just fundamentally like totally different. And again, like credit to Troy for winning this game. You know, I thought Kilcrease, ever since he really like bottomed out against Memphis, he's really gotten better every single week. And like the stats may not totally be there. Like he's not throwing for 400 every week like he did last week, but the mistakes aren't there. He's not putting up like embarrassing like yardage totals. It's just, it seems to be kind of a gradual progression in the way that I haven't seen 2 years of progression out of Aiden Arminta.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, where do we get off this train at is more what I'm asking.
We talked about this last week. I don't know what stands between this ultra hot Troy team and representing the West. Like it really is going to come down to that Southern Miss game. Because you gave me some pushback on it last week, but I feel even stronger about it now. Like between Louisiana, Arkansas State, Old Dominion, and Georgia State, who is going to beat Troy and give them a loss before Southern Miss? Right now, the only feasible opportunity there is Old Dominion. And I think we've solved it. It appears that Old Dominion has, to some degree, been solved from a defensive perspective. And teams now have the formula. Troy is a team like James Madison that has both the schematics and the talent to stop Colton Joseph, like we've seen Marshall and James Madison do the past 2 weeks. And so I'm becoming even warmer to the idea that Troy ends up playing James Madison, who it looks like will be out of the East in the championship game.
Maybe so. I just, I always just want to give, by rule of thumb, the edge to the quarterback coaching combo that Southern Miss has. That frankly, Jared Parker, maybe he's figured it out with Kilcrease the way that he kind of did late last season with Caldwell, but then, that was thrown into turmoil when Caldwell transferred out in the spring. Yeah, maybe it does come down to the last game of the season, but I think from here on, Old Dominion's going to have to play their brains out because the chances of them representing the East are incredibly minuscule. But if you lose another game, I mean, you might as well go ahead and you're writing your own ticket to play in the 68 Ventures Bowl and play Central Michigan. Like
this becomes
over at that point.
This is where the argument certainly becomes a lot more theoretical as people who are so far removed from the. But what about a Ricky Rahne coached Old Dominion team who, as we talked about with Jack, whose ceiling has only ever been 6-7, makes you think that they can really buckle down and make that change in the second half of a season?
It's not necessarily that. It's just that I think Colton Joseph's a better quarterback than Kilcrease at the end of the day.
I mean, yeah.
But those are typically the things that make the difference when it comes down. I mean, if you go back and look at quarterback matchups, 9 times out of 10, the team with the better quarterback in the Sun Belt is going to get the win. It's not typically, and there are obviously games like Old Dominion JMU this past week where it's like Barnett can raise up, like he's extremely volatile in the way that like Jack said, but like he can elevate in a big game spot. Kilcrease is like, yeah, he played really well against Texas State and Buffalo and ULM and these teams, but it's like we'll get to the Texas State. They have some serious issues, and Buffalo I don't think is that good of a team, and ULM, I mean, we talk about how hard of a cap there is on this team and ceiling wise every single week, because frankly, there's nothing else to say. Like they don't change anything about what they are. It's like they had their identity and they're going to keep doing it until, they're going to keep beating their head against that wall until either their brains are showing or they get through the wall. And it's like, the wall's not going anywhere. Like, it is what it is. So that's more where my hesitancy is like 9 times out of 10, the team with the better quarterback, unless they just turn in a total stinker, like wins those games. All right. So let's move on here. Coastal upsets App State. Samari Collier was a lot better of a passer this week. He completed over 30% of his passes, threw for 118 and a score, ran for 74 yards and 2 touchdowns. Coastal had 4 sacks in this game as a defense. It just feels like Collier. This is why I always push for maybe we look at a quarterback change, because look at how this team with Coastal the last 2 weeks has shifted now that they've put Collier in that quarterback spot versus a Tad Hudson, who to me is comparable to Arminta and Bishop Davenport. It's like when you go look at South Alabama and you look at, ULM, and you're like, let's just keep doing the same thing and hope that things change. And it's like, a couple weeks ago, we were talking about Tim Beck being out of a job at the end of the season. And now they've won 2 straight games. They've beaten App. Collier has some juice. I don't know what kind of eligibility he has left, so he could be gone at the end of the season. But we can talk about the App side of things. Like, their defense still has significant problems that aren't probably going to be solved by the end of this season. But yeah, Coastal's alive. They're not like a free win on the schedule. They're not a free space on the schedule anymore.
No, I mean, this change has really electrified them. And we talked about it last week, that it's also just a really fun story that I hope people latch on to. This is a guy that last year was playing JUCO ball, was JUCO, like all country, whatever award that is. But so that's a really, really cool story for them. I'm still scared. I think a lot of the issues that we saw, because it wasn't just that Tad Hudson or MJ Morris or whoever was going out there really couldn't play. I mean, there were some real defensive liabilities on this team that even against App, an App team that is itself a little more alive with JJ Cole than it was with AJ Swan. But the defensive issues on both sides still really, really scare me, and feel like no matter how solved you feel the quarterback position is, like, these are not Braylon Braxton type discoveries. These are guys that can win you 6-7 games discoveries. And so there's still a real finite, and that it shifts the gap, right? We've talked all year about how there's such the large gap between James Madison, and then, jury's out on where the gap is before you hit Old Dominion. But then after Old Dominion, it's everyone else. I don't think this shrinks the gap that much.
No, I don't either. I think App profiles as like a fun team that can score points. Realistically, I never really thought that they were going to push either JMU or Old Dominion for those 2 top spots. Like, especially when we saw the season open, you just can't. It's really tough to overcome getting beat in the way that Southern Miss beat them a couple weeks ago. And I understand that was one conference loss, and you didn't have JJ Cole, but it just leaves you like next to no margin for error. And now we're kind of seeing that, where it's like they like Old Dominion already have 2 conference losses. Again, JMU's 4-0 in the Sun Belt. You're not competing really for the East. You're just we want to get to a bowl game, essentially is the goal at that point. It feels like they found a guy in JJ Cole who can be that quarterback for them. He was 27 of 41, 278, 2 touchdowns. I think the thing that concerns me if I was an App fan is kind of just their inability to run the football in this game. We had talked about in weeks prior, Rashad Dubinion was literally the lifeblood of the team when AJ Swan was playing. In this game, he ran for 38 yards on 10 carries. Jakari Lewis, The other running back, 15 carries, 43 yards. None of these guys were really lighting it up on the ground. So that's the other problem is it then turns you into a one-dimensional team where it's like, all right, JJ, you got to go out and do it all for us because we can't run the ball. We can't play defense. Figure it out, buddy. And if we don't win, then it's kind of just, we move on from there.
Yeah, I'm curious if there's something going on with Dominion, perhaps injury-wise, because in the past 2 weeks, he's gone for 56 against Georgia State and 38 against Coastal, but the volume has also decreased. So not to mention the efficiency downgrade, where this is a guy that against Boise was running for 6.6 per carry and only runs 3.8, but the volume has also disappeared. He hasn't run for more than 20 times in a game since that Southern Miss loss. Where he ran 24 times for 95. His highest since then in the last 4 games is only 19 carries. So I'm curious if there's got to be something else going on there because, as you said, Rashad Dominion was carrying this offense and again, is one of the upper tier running backs in a relatively weak running back conference right now. And so you're giving your best running back 10 carries against in a game you're losing. Same thing against Georgia State. You beat them, but you only give him 12 carries. So, I'm curious what's going on there.
It's kind of crazy from last year how good the running backs were to this year. And I know it's been like injuries, transfers, but you go from like Ahmad Hardy, Ismail Mahdi, Jaquez Cross, like Jalen White, like all these guys. And then this year it's like, are two or three of the top running backs in the conference all play for JMU? Like, is that where we're at as a conference?
I mean, the best runner in the conference is a quarterback. 2 of the best runners in the conference are a quarterback. So
right. This is like got to be a historically bad year for running backs just in general. Like, it's like the guys that show up are good, but they can't stay healthy. And then there's like a slew of these other guys that are just like plotters that like don't really add a whole lot. All right, so let's transition. Let's talk about Marshall, Texas State. So this was a wild one. Texas State for the 3rd straight game allowed a touchdown in the last 2 minutes that either allowed the other team that they were playing to tie or take the lead. They've done it against Arkansas State. They've done it against Troy, and now they've done it against Marshall. It wasn't Brad Jackson's fault. He threw for 444 yards and 2 touchdowns. I don't know. This was almost a self-inflicted wound for Marshall, though, a little bit, if they didn't win this game in overtime, because the way that it worked out is at the end of the game, Texas State's driving. They line up for a field goal. They kick it. It's wide, but Marshall had called timeout. So the kicker for Texas State gets another crack at it, ties the game in regulation. They go to OT. That would have been an all-time loss if they hadn't sealed this game in OT. But they do. They go to double overtime. They eventually win the game. Jakari Lewis cashes in a touchdown at the end there. And yeah, Marshall's still hot. Defensively, outside of last week against Old Dominion, they're not the best defense I've ever seen in my life. But they are finding a way to win games ever since they lost that overtime game to Louisiana weeks back.
Yeah. So this is also Texas State's obviously 2nd consecutive overtime loss. And also 2nd week in a row where they took a field goal on the final play of regulation. They made it this week, missed it last week, could have beat Troy on the final play of the game, but ended up missing. Have fun in the Pac-12, man. I mean, this is what we've been saying, right? This is GJ Kinney. This is what this team is about. They're doing exactly what they did last year, where they came out, they started the year 4-2, and kind of started to it kind of fell apart. They ended up going to a bowl game, but I mean, it was just a very different Texas State team from week 1 to week 12. And all of a sudden you've lost 3 in a row, twice in overtime. And we said this last week, I'll say it again. This is what you have criticized Georgia Southern under Clay Helton for in the past, is like, awesome, you guys really have the rah-rah and the swagger of a cool head coach. But when it comes down to it, you do not show a backbone late in close games or late in when it comes to important games late in the season. Troy or Texas State had a world where they could still be in the hunt for a conference championship bid, but now having started the conference 0-3, it's like awesome. Against Arkansas State, Troy, and Marshall, too. This is yet to mention that they've not played James Madison or Southern Miss yet.
Those teams are going to road grade them. Like, it is going to be ugly. Shout out Carlos Del Rio Wilson in this one. 277 through the air, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Also led the game in rushing with 88 yards. This is another casualty from last year of like AJ Turner was another really good running back. And now he's gone, and it's just kind of like, I don't know. Marshall doesn't really have a running back that really makes kind of a difference, but considering Marshall and Texas State, this is a perfect style matchup because it feels like these teams play this type of game like almost every week. And Troy, you throw Troy, Arkansas State in that mix. It's like some mix of these 4 teams are going to be absolute cinema to watch because they're going to go to overtime. There's going to come down to the last play of regulation. It's just, it's great football to watch. It's great from a viewing perspective, but realistically, like, are these teams going to do anything? Like, are they going to compete for the divisions they're in? Troy, maybe, but the other 3, absolutely not. Like, you can't play defense like this. And I think we said in the preseason too, the past 2 years, Texas State has averaged almost like 38 points a game on offense. They've got to be hovering sort of around that number, but their defense is even worse than we imagined. And that's kind of hard to do compared to where they have been the last couple of years.
All we can say is "told you so." I mean, this is the exact. I mean, this is the script, right?
Yeah.
What have we learned this week or last week or the week prior, other than like, I think the only positive to really take away from Texas State in this stretch is that Brad Jackson's legit. He had some shaky.
It's not his fault.
It's certainly not his fault, and he's only a freshman. I just hope that he goes under the radar enough that you guys can keep him when you ship off to the Pac-12, because he kind of like Colton Joseph, kind of like a lot of, Jalen Rayner too, maybe. It's like, you couldn't get a job at UNC. You couldn't take that Gio Lopez job too.
Yep.
So,
yeah. Have fun in the Pac-12, like Zeke said, because you may be going next year without GJ Kinney or Brad Jackson. If he leaves, let's say GJ Kinney leaves and goes to Oklahoma State, like people have been projecting. I don't know if that's going to hold if they keep choking away games like this, because Oklahoma State might look at them and go, we got enough of that with Mike Gundy, no thanks. But if he makes it over there and then he brings Brad Jackson as his quarterback with him, Texas State could be back in the Jake Spavital hole years that they had been in. All right, let's breeze through this one. This was pretty easy. Southern Miss defeats Louisiana 22-10. This game, Southern Miss felt like they just kind of had Louisiana in a headlock the whole time. We had kind of said this last week. Southern Miss was going to get stops defensively. Louisiana does not really have defensive personnel that can make that happen. I mean, Braylon Braxton hits a 98-yard touchdown pass to kind of seal it to Micah Davis at the end. But from it was just, we saw some Walker Howard reps, which we did not think that we were going to get again, because he had that oblique injury that he had that seemed like he was out for the year, but then he came in and played sparingly kind of throughout the second quarter. Lunch played his worst game of the year. He threw for like 112. Louisiana, I mean, this is going to be a season to forget. I don't, like we said last week, or like I told you last week, I don't think this is grounds for firing Desormeaux. But Billy Napier's back on the market. So maybe
I was just, I mean, you are now you're 5 games away from Billy Napier and Arch Manning, maybe.
coming home. He makes the "I'm coming home" video to Louisiana.
Exactly. That's the biggest takeaway is, guys, you are at 2-5. That means you only have 5 games left until you get to see Billy Napier back in red and black.
I will say it's not the greatest for Desermo that Billy Napier's available and out on the market and on a buyout. And so I'm sure they've got offsetting contract language, but Louisiana's not going to have to pay him what they were paying him before because Florida's paying that. So you could pay him, you could fire in theory Desermo and then just pay him $300,000 because it doesn't matter because Florida's paying that salary. And then once Desermo's paid off, you just give him the money that he was given prior. So
I can't imagine that there are other teams clamoring for Desermo's signature as their head coach.
No,
ask him if he wants a demotion. You want to take your old job back?
I don't think he's taking that demotion, man.
Hey, man. Well, it's that or you're on the street if we were taking Billy Napier. So it's like, go back and coach the tight ends or, enjoy the streets of Lafayette.
So Southern kind of had that option with Chad Lunsford, and he was like, I'll go down to Boca and coach the tight ends rather than stick around. So, and he was like a lifer. So if he didn't go for it, nobody will. Yeah, Braylon Braxton played pretty well, but Southern Miss continues to be inefficient running the football. I think if they do make it past Troy, like you said, Troy's kind of presented themselves as a challenge. If they do make it past Troy, we can't run the ball is not going to fly against James Madison. And I already know that James Madison's great at stopping the run, but if you come into the game and you're like, we're one dimensional, they're going to seem like blood in the water and be like, oh, cool. So we just need to defend Braylon Braxton and then we win. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Last game of the night, it was our game, Georgia State, Georgia Southern. I know Georgia State's defense is not good. This was probably JC French's cleanest game I've seen since he played Boise last year. 210, 3 touchdowns passing, added 85 yards rushing and a score. Cameron Brown, I was really impressed with. He had almost 400 yards of offense by himself between the rushing and the passing production. They just, other than Ted Hurst, they don't have anybody around him that makes a difference on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, not on a week-to-week basis. There have been several receivers that have popped up for one game at a time. Javon Robinson was one in this game, 7 catches for 71. But yeah, I mean, on a week-to-week, it's Ted Hurst. And then it's like, I don't know, Lane Waddle is a good blocking tight end that can catch a couple passes. Georgia State was not going to be anything this year, but it is so frustrating that we had to do this song and dance with TJ Finley and Christian Valaire to find out that Cameron Brown is legitimate because mind you, what's been Georgia State's offensive problem throughout the season, aside from quarterback inefficacy, we've both argued that it really starts with the run game and the inability to run a ball. And it's not like Georgia State ran the ball excellently this game. Rashad Amos was the leading rusher outside of Brown with 29 yards. It was all Cameron Brown. Even against this really bad rush defense in Georgia Southern, Georgia State couldn't run the ball outside of Cameron Brown. So it's like, what were we doing all this time? And that's what really, really baffles me and makes it feel like real gross mismanagement from Del McGee from a talent perspective, in that this guy, Cameron Brown, who is only a junior, he has, I would imagine 2 years eligibility after this season, possibly 3, who knows? But the point being here, this is clearly the truth. This is clearly what needs to happen. Is he going to go for 400 combined yards week in week? Certainly not. Certainly not, especially not when he's getting no help from the rest of the run game. But this is better than what we were seeing out of TJ Finley, and certainly better than Christian Valaire.
Oh, almost undoubtedly. Yeah, for sure. Just to add a little bit more praise on Cameron Brown, second highest PFF passing grade in the conference this week, just behind Alonza Barnett with an 80.2. and then was the 6th highest rushing grade of anybody that took more than like 10 carries with a 72.9 rush grade. To me, this game was over. I mean, it was competitive all the way up until about 11, 12 minutes left in the fourth quarter when it was 27-24. That fumble that Lane Waddell lost, and then the subsequent 3 and out on the next Georgia State series, and just to see, the drive charts for Southern be like touchdown, fumble by State, touchdown, punt by State, touchdown. It's like, yeah, that's the game in a nutshell. Is like they just didn't show up in the fourth quarter at all. And I like Del McGee. Like I liked that obviously he came on and took over for Fritz when he departed for Tulane and won us our first ever bowl game at the FBS level. However, I can't deny like he shouldn't have a job any longer. Like he's out of his depth. Like he should have never named Hugh Jackson the offensive coordinator, because that has not worked really. I mean, it's bad when there are Southern fans on Twitter making observations about like why hadn't Cameron Brown played all season for State, and the answer is basically like like that seems to be the answer that we've gotten from everyone. So yeah, I'm shocked he's still employed. I mean, we're recording this Sunday the 19th. Yeah, he shouldn't be employed as a head coach any longer. He should be on the street. I hate to say it.
No, I mean, it's frustrating because I think the way he speaks about Georgia State is, maybe not as of late, but very early in the job, I was really, I guess, impressed. It's all coach speak, so you can't put a ton of weight in it, but I thought he had a really interesting vision. He really wants the student body to be involved. I mean, obviously he comes from Southern, but he also comes from UGA, which, is a whole different ballpark in terms of like student involvement in that football team and fan buy-in. So he had a really interesting vision. But when you are, it's too early to write the obituary, but the epitaph is going to read, it's like, or you can't be a recruiting coach at Georgia State. It's just simply not that doesn't align. If you are at any P4 school, that works. But when
you have to bring something scheme wise to Georgia State that is like a Jamie Chadwell, where it's like it can't be denied. You know what I mean? Like it may take time to get the personnel to play in that scheme, but you can't, like you said, you can't show up and be like, well, I don't call plays, but also I'm not even really probably in on meetings like to do anything with the offense. Like you can have a Billy Napier where it's like, okay, Desermo's here and he's an offensive guy and I'm an offensive guy, so we kind of work together. You can't have a CEO head coach come in and go, Hugh Jackson's my offensive coordinator. No more questions. Thank you. It just doesn't work like that.
That's the problem. It's like because the biggest hope right now is that, let's say Del McGee retains his job and is here this time next season. The hope is that the guys, and to no fault of his own, he had a really crappy start getting the job well after the recruiting cycle, just by nature of when Sean Elliott left. But it's like, what the ceiling is that some of those guys start showing up. What do you expect to change this time next year? I don't see anything that indicates that it will be a positive change, and it's disappointing. This is I'm relatively new to the conference and to Georgia State fandom, so this is my first failed coach here. I mean, Georgia State historically has not had many coaches. It's been a program that is really defined by longevity at that position.
They gave Trent Miles a ton of runway. And I was like, hey guys, I'm not even a fan of this team, but like outside of beating Southern in Statesboro in 2015, like what are we doing here? Like how many more years are we going to give him?
Yeah, so I don't know. I guess I'm dealing with the grief of understanding like, well, this is what we are now. We're just counting down the days.
Yep. All right, Zeke. So that wraps up this edition. Do you want to tell everybody where they can find you on socials?
Yeah, man. You can find me on Twitter at Zeke Palermo, ZekePalermo. It is high school playoff season for my area. So if you're interested in Northwest Georgia playoff softball and volleyball, boy, do I have the Twitter account for you.
Yep. Thanks to Jack Fitzpatrick from JMU Sports News coming on. Throw them a follow on Twitter. They do a great job with all JMU athletics, not just football, but they're a really good follow for, in-depth stats and things that, frankly, we as a Sunbelt overarching podcast don't have time to kind of dig into the nitty-gritty a lot of times. So yeah, throw them a follow. You can send us an email, warmweatherfans@gmail.com. Check us out on YouTube, TikTok, all that jazz. Usually at Warm Weather Fans is the handle. You can find me on X at Watch the Stone. We will be back Thursday to talk over all of the games for week 9. This has been Warm Weather Fans.